Why don't we have a word of prayer together as we begin? Dear Jesus, we learned last week about the clay and how it's so challenging to have the purity and the willingness to be moved and molded and shaped and filled and used. But we realize, Lord, that that's just not a one-time thing. It's a process. And so we come to you in a very special way, asking that you will help us take the next step. We all want to be useful in your hands, and so we go through the process of being prepared, the process of being purified, the process of being shaped, and the process of being fired and confirmed in our faith. And so we come to you saying, Lord, help us to be willing to go through whatever it is that you've got in mind so that we can be useful vessels in your kingdom, and we'll give you the praise and the honor and the glory. Amen. Okay, very, very quick review. You have two handouts. One is about 4 pages long. And on the back of the 4th page, it's sort of the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation that we had last week. But I'm sure you didn't go into that and take a screenshot of it, so you don't have it in your notebook. So we went in, got you a screenshot, and it says characteristics of a team. All right? Personal awareness, personality, preferences, skills, talents, gifts, willingness to be known. All right? This is sort of the beginning place of what we need to do to be prepared to be a team as we know ourselves and we start to find our place. Then the second one, how do we actually begin to make a team? It says pray together, develop a spiritual basis for our relationship, spend time talking, write it down, get examples, define terms, ask for understanding, and repeat all the steps again. Over and over and over again. Spend time talking, spend time learning, spend time getting to know and to really be known, all right? So that's another screenshot. If you want me to punch holes in this so that you can have it in your little notebook, we'll gladly do that too. Why do we want to work in teams? We're headed toward spiritual vitality, all right? It's that cap on backwards. Let's go for a ride. Let's start the adventure. That's the reason we do teams, because you can't go there by yourself. I didn't hear anybody disagree with me. You can't go there by yourself. My kids would not ride the roller coasters by themselves. It's too scary. It's too out of our comfort zone. They had to have Dad or Grandpa go with them. Even past the time when I felt that was really the most enjoyable thing I wanted to do. Teams help each other to do the things that need to be done. Spiritual vitality is we're walking along the path together. Okay? And then we've got a whole lot of things here. The pyramid is very important, all right? And then finally we get back here. Why a team? Our strengths are multiplied. Our weaknesses are compensated for. We learn faster. There's an accountability. It's just normal. John Wesley came to this country and started preaching and teaching all over the countryside. And the way he finished up his work was always the same. He formed people into small Bible study groups. Excuse me. Pastrami, wonderful. He had a person in charge of each one of the Bible study groups, and he would ask 4 questions every single week when they got together. 4 questions. And they were very personal. They were very difficult to answer. How much have you read? What have you done to testify to your faith? What have you done that you need forgiveness for? There were 4 very tough questions in every group every single week. You know why? Because that was accountability. That was answering for what your personal life was with friends and brothers and sisters that were all walking along the same path. And one person would come along and say, I really had a good week this week. And another one would say, I really struggled this week. And they would balance each other off. John Wesley, the Methodist Church, the Wesleyan denomination, is formed and created and founded on accountability to each other. There's only one way to get this, all right? And teams are what do that. I took care of a Nazarene church in John Day. They had one advantage you do not have here. They had a dozen small groups meeting all throughout in the community in different homes throughout the week. How did I know that church was going to come on and thrive and do well? They were accountable to each other. All right? We don't have that same small group mechanism already built into our fellowship, so we need to remember this is where we're headed. The pastor ahead of me in John Day had created these groups. So I came in, it was already functioning. They needed some direction. We needed to tweak it up a bit, all right? And they did. And they're doing wonderful. But you have to understand, that's what we need to be thinking about doing too. We have to be accountable to each other. Now I'm going to go, this is your handout for this week. So it's only 2 pages long, and it's sort of the culmination of the PowerPoint, all right? I'm not going to run the PowerPoint because we only got about halfway through the hour-long presentation last week, and I didn't want to take another whole session to finish the last half. But I'll bring the concluding ones. How do you cultivate trust? All right, now think about this in a small group. You're sitting in your house with 6 friends in a circle, just like John Wesley would have engineered. How do you build trust? Spend time together. You're not going to sit there and just look at each other. You know what you're going to be doing? You're going to be talking. You're going to be talking about everything. You may be talking about the Chiefs game. You may be talking about your grandson's wrestling match. You may be talking about schoolwork. You may be talking about what's happening with your sore shoulder. It's a topic of conversation, Bob. It just is. But as we talk, we're also learning from each other. Be vulnerable. What that means is tell the truth. You don't just smile and say, I'm good here. Nothing going on. Everything's fine. No problem. It's be real. Be willing to tell the truth about what God's doing in your life. Years ago, I keep going back to this because it was such a powerful ministry. It was called Lay Witness Mission. And they would take people from individual congregations like this one, send them to Olathe or send them out to, Topeka or someplace, and they would go to another church and they would tell them what God was doing in their lives. Well, if it was such a good idea to go to Topeka, why not do it here? You follow? It's just simple. God's working this. Now, you know the problem.
It's never a good idea to go to Topeka.
We'll leave that one, just be real, be reliable. What means is don't just be hit or miss. Be committed to the process. Give grace. Grace. Oh, man. How do I, as a pastor, give grace? There's no one in the church more dedicated than me. So why do I give them the freedom to not be as committed as I? I'm sorry, I should have said that differently. Being an old-time member of this church, nobody is more committed than me, not even the preacher. Oh, I'm sorry, that stepped on somebody's toes. How do I, being a newly committed Christian, who's completely emptied my heart out and said, Lord, you take me and use me, and a bunch of these people have been Christians a long time and they're not nearly as committed as I am right now, and well, every one of us knows what's going on inside of us. We can't always see what's happening inside of the other. And whether you're a pastor, whether you're an old-time member of the church, or whether you're a brand new Christian, or whether you feel like you've just sacrificed everything about your life to be here, we're always supposed to give grace to the other. That means be patient. God was patient with me through some very, very difficult years. I can afford to be gracious to people who are going through their own process. Be patient. God is in charge of making sure things are done well. And so we just have to do that. And then spend more time. See, it starts at the top, spend time, all the way through the process, being real, being vulnerable, being honest, asking for grace, giving grace, and then spend more time. That's how teams are developed. Yes, Marianne? You're exactly right. How did I happen to miss that? Must have been something Freudian about that.
You're assuming when you're. Well, I do have, because I have a comment about this.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Occasionally, I can't get to the person to ask
Yeah.
what they meant. And if I have to talk to somebody else, I appreciate it when they say, I assume this is what they meant. And so then I know that's their assumption. Instead of the person who says, here's what he meant. And I think, oh. And so I feel what I got out was wrong or whatever. And I don't know, it was their assumption. They haven't cleared it up. And so I always like to say, I'm assuming this. And then somebody knows, this is just my assumption. Don't take it for the gospel truth. This is just how I interpreted what was said in the meeting or whatever.
It's a very powerful observation, Marianne, very powerful. And here's the issue. Getting to the point we understand each other requires a great deal of time and commitment. All right? Yes?
The other thing is, if I really don't want to ask you what you meant, that's a good signal to me that I've got some problems in that area. If I avoid the asking for clarification, then I've got bigger problems than just whatever they said.
Jesus said, if you have anything against your brother, anything. I mean, you can take it as being this really gross thing, but I think Jesus was talking about everyday normal problems. If you got something between you, go and talk to them. Be willing to talk. And if that talk doesn't bring you to resolution, find your brothers, find wise people, and go together and try and find understanding. And try and find a resolution. I am a firm believer that every church, every organization ought to have a team of people in place called the Matthew 18:15 team. Just in case there are differences of opinion or difficulties that are happening, you can say to that team, could you guys go with me? Could you ladies go with me? I'd like to work this thing out to make sure we're okay. Already predetermined who has the heart that are willing to hear and listen and respond and help. I think every church ought to have that built into their structure. All right?
Well, you got to be careful with that, though, because Matthew 18:15. I hope everyone knows where Christ says, basically, if your brother sins against you, then go and point it out to him in private, not out there in the fellowship hall, not talking with other people about it and figuring out how you're going to go talk to them about it. That requires trust. You have to trust that other person to respect your faith enough to shut their mouth. Like if you came to me and said, I need to talk to you, there's no doubt I'd shut my mouth and listen to you. Because I I have that respect for you. You have to trust me enough to know that I would give that respect back to you, and vice versa, and all around. We're falling on that, guys. We're falling hard.
And it's because we've gone through a difficult time, and we've had tensions, and there's a history, and you go through and say, well, it didn't work out last time we talked, or they didn't listen the last time I was talking. There are all kinds of things that happen, and those are the breakdowns of team concept that makes it difficult for us to get to the point we're ready to call a senior pastor. But thankfully, you called me, so I'm going to help you. We're going to get past that. We're going to trust, and we're going to be able to build on that, and we're going to work together. It's all built on trust.
But it also, Matthew 18:15 says, if your brother sins against you, not if you feel like being judgmental and want to go tell them stuff they're doing is wrong.
Yeah. I want to respond to Marion's, if I can, for just a second. Assuming, I'm going to go back to the assuming part. We, as human beings, tend to listen with our heart, okay, instead of our ears, all right? We hear out of our fears rather than our hearing aids. And so we tend to misunderstand rather frequently because we hear. Now, this is something Judy and I struggle with all the time, all right? Amen? No way, amen?
Be careful.
No, okay. We play a game, and it's called I'll Bet You Can't Repeat What I Just Said. Now, why would we play a game like I'll bet you can't repeat what I just said? Because most of the time I can't repeat what she just said. You know why? Because I've already made a knee-jerk reaction that says, why do you say that? And I've already started to defend myself. I've already assumed that she's thinking I'm an idiot, and so I'm pretty safe usually, but once in a while it's not true, and I have to defend my honor or my integrity, okay? Honestly, this happens all the time.
Well, for example, on news, somebody, the police chief, has a news conference, and so they say this. And then the reporter comes on and says, police chief said blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, he did? Not what I got out of what he said. We do it all the time.
All the time.
I usually don't realize that the other people in the conversation heard something different than I did. But they did.
One of the advantages, I'm going to, yes, Michelle.
On top of that, I think that's where it comes into and having a team or someone else that are trusted, because trust is earned. You can't, we're human and we all walk different paths. We're bringing different things to the table, so everyone's trust level is going to be different. But having a team or someone that you can go to and say, okay, because I run into this also where with Miriam say, hey, I understood this. Is that what was said? Did I miss something, or am I reading into it? Where is it? Because it's not that I'm saying that there's an issue with that person right away. This is how I understood it. I need to make sure, am I understanding it correctly before I address it? Otherwise, I'm addressing something that was never there.
You hit exactly on what I was going to share. Judy and I debrief each other after each sermon or after each meeting. What did you hear? I didn't hear that. Where did you get that? How did you get that? That went completely by me. I had no idea how that was done. Having a person with a different set of lenses helps me to see more clearly. And by the way, I do trust her implicitly that she doesn't get it wrong. It's usually me that gets it wrong, and we have to kind of bring balance. I am an emotional guy. It happens. Every once in a while, I'll have an instant reaction to something, and I really didn't hear it well, or I responded badly, okay? And so trust is a very important thing. I'm going to turn to this last one on the back page, the Team Continuum. Very important. Hold that open, fold it back so that you can have that on your lap. But I want to talk to you about the little diagram I have up here on the board. I made my way through college because I was both a band member and a choir member. And in order to be a band member or a choir member, I had to realize what place I had in the organization. All right? This is an orchestra, if you haven't gotten the general outline of what was here. There are low strings over here, the cellos and the bass fiddles, whatever they call that huge thing. Here are the violins here, maybe a viola or two. Here are the flutes. See that little dot right there? That's the only piccolo. All right, this is the woodwind section, all of the clarinets and that kind of stuff, the oboes and the bassoons. Here's the high brass back here. They're the noisy ones. They just blast all the way through, so the director always puts them in the back. All right? Here's the saxophones over here on the front, all the way from the alto sax all the way to the baritone. Here are the low brasses, the trombones, the baritone horns, that kind of stuff. They're sort of flashy, but they're not as loud as the tubas back here. All the basses and timpanis are back here, the chimes and bells are here, and the drums are over here. You can't be a member of the band if you're going to act like a soloist. You understand what I mean? The band director don't like that. I had a young man in my youth group back in Pennsylvania, Alex Duggar. He grew into this beautiful, tall, slender, strong young man, and he played the tuba. One of these ones that sits on your shoulder, not the one that wraps around you. And he played for the university. And he happened to end up with enough really, really talented, really gifted tuba friends, tuba playing friends. And it ended up that they got to be highlighted during the halftime shows and things. They'd bring this group of tubas out, 8 or 9 of them across, and they would just blast out, just as loud as they could go, into the stands during the halftime show with this great tuba ensemble that they had. As soon as it was done, they had to go back to their place in the band and play nice. You know why? They couldn't overblow everybody in the whole thing. They could have their solo part, but they had to stay within the framework of the overall musical score that they were doing together. Now, when I say that, I was a trombone player back in those days. I wasn't very good. I was always third chair. And so I was always doing the fill-in stuff. You know, those harmony parts that never really got highlighted. Nobody ever had me stand up and show what I could do. They usually said, you stay seated. Stay right there. But Mr. Gennegi always pounded home to me over and over again, listen to what everybody else is doing. You're not alone. Listen to what the rest of the group is doing. And listen to what the director is saying, because no matter how you practice that particular part, when it comes time to put it together and he puts his hand down and says, quiet it down, he's actually trying to make the group sound better. Well, we practiced it loud. We had double fortes. We were really going to town. That's fine. But now you're in the band. You have to And he always told certain ones, I need more from you. Come on, give me more, because they were a little bit shy or timid, or they couldn't blow quite as hard or something, or they couldn't. And the French horns, he was always telling them, relax, boys, take it easy. You're blowing too much. You're overriding everybody else's sound. When we were in the chorus, well, I'll actually tell you one story. My first church was the Zion Church of God in Handel, Ohio. And we had what was known as a steamboat soprano. Have you ever heard of steamboat soprano? A steamboat has a whistle that's really, really loud, all right? And this particular lady always performed at full volume. And it was significant volume, all right? She just blared away. And sometimes hers was the only voice I could hear when I was standing in front. I wasn't directing a choir, so I never told her, relax, turn it down a notch. But if she'd have been in my choir, I'd have had to say, now I'm going to put you at the back so that you don't override the people with smaller voices. In a choir, the point you get to is to make the overall sound beautiful. In the orchestra, it's to make the overall sound unified and balanced. In a church, a team church, there is always going to be a strong vocal individual group or Sunday school class. Just most recently, it was a Sunday school class. Wasn't here, it was previously. And they were the steamboat sopranos. They were the ones blaring the warnings, blaring out over everybody else. I had to keep saying to them, relax, relax. I have to keep harmony here. I have to bring it into balance. I'll tell you one more story, and it's a silly one, all right? I had finished taking care of a church, wonderful church, fantastic church, wonderful ministry, and I had gone into my next ministry. And I hadn't been there too long, and a gentleman called me, and he said, Pastor Bob, I have to ask you a question about our church. I said, okay. And he said, are we a difficult church to pastor to? We're being told now that we're a very difficult church to lead as a pastor. And his name happened to be David. I said, oh, David, how's the family? How are the kids? How's everybody getting along? You know, everybody doing well in school, everything like that. Changed the subject completely. Well, after he'd told me about the family and everything, he came back to it. He says, are we a difficult church to take care of as a pastor? I said, but boy, I just really appreciate having those years when we spent some time together that was just incredible. I am so thankful for the time we spent. Tried to change the subject again, but he was too smart for that second time. Tell me, is the report that we're getting that we're a very difficult church to pastor true or not? And I said, David, it's like this. In the old Westerns, there was always this picture that you have in your mind of this stagecoach, either 4 or 6 horses stretched out in front of that long tongue that was out there, that T-shaped banner where they're all hitched up. And there was a man riding up in the top of the stagecoach, up in that basket that they had, that seat clear up at the top. The name they had for him was stagecoach driver, but we always call him the mule skinner. All right? Mule skinner sat up there, and if you paid attention, if you kind of listened, when that driver would get up in that seat, there was a strap that went from every one of the members of that team, and that strap would come in, and the mule skinner, before he actually got ready to take off and start rolling, would pull that strap around an individual finger and lock it in. Depending on what that individual personality of that horse in the team needed. So he would take the time and very carefully wrap those around his gloved hands on both hands, and then they would start on their journey. But he had it already straightened out. He knew the horses well enough that when one would start to pull away and start to head over yonder, all he had to do was just pull on that finger to that one rein and bring them back into line. And when one was getting a little bit lazy and was letting somebody else carry all the weight, he'd take that one hand and just flip that one rein, and that would slap on the back of that horse and pick up speed, and away they'd go. I said, when you have a highly spirited team pulling the stagecoach, it takes a skillful mule skinner. You follow? Because every one of those people have their own personality. They're in their individual role. One's ready to take the point and just head right out. And you want that one on the front lead horse. But you better have another one right next to it that's just about as fast that you can encourage and keep them pulling evenly. The slower ones might be a little farther back in the pack, but because the front ones are setting the pace, they tend to keep up. You follow? You put people into the team based on their skills, their personalities, their gifts, their abilities, and then you have to kind of be careful how you use them. I said, you have a church that is filled with the most wonderfully gifted, strong personalities that I have ever in my life dealt with. They are amazing. And you hired a kid straight out of seminary and you put him up in the mule skinner's box, and he's sitting there going, what do I do next? What do I do next? In 20 years, he'll be a good mule skinner, if he survives. But right now, you're going through a pretty rough ride, because you got this one going over here, and this one's almost ready to sit down and go to sleep, and this one's over here, and then this one's over here. You see?